Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is very good and you should go watch it right now. See ya! Just kidding, I have more to say than just that. But this movie really is just that good, and you should definitely watch it. Here's why. Oh, and if you're worried about spoilers, don't be. I'll give you a fair warning before I actually get to the spoiler section of this video, but until then, I won't be talking any major plot points. I mean, there's also a couple of plot points I can't really talk about anyways, but that's a complicated story, and I'll get to that in a second. But anyways, the first thing anyone has to mention about this movie and why it is so good is the animation. Because if you are not talking about why the animation is so good in this movie, then you are failing. Because this may be it. The single best looking animated movie I have ever seen. Or at the very least, the best looking CGI animated movie I've ever seen. And honestly, I'm struggling to think of any 2D animated movies I've seen that look better. It really is just that good. And it's more than just an improvement on the first movie's animation style, because they mix in so many more unique and creative styles. And you would think all these creative, unique, and different art styles would clash, but both due to the fact that this movie is about the multiverse and the tremendously good direction, it doesn't. The second thing that's really good about this movie is how it develops its characters from the first movie, as well as introducing new ones. Though the primary focus is on Miles, Gwen, and his parents, all the other characters are still very interesting. Even the characters that only have a little bit of screen time still shine in their brief moment in the spotlight. And the best of these is definitely Miguel O'Hara, but I can't really talk about him until I get to the spoiler section, because if I were to say pretty much anything about him, it would be spoiling the plot. But trust me, he's very good. The one aspect of this movie that might throw some people off is the pacing, as the first half of the movie is mostly pretty slow outside of the opening. But trust me, this slower paced first half is very deliberate, and it will pay off in the end if you're patient, as not only is the second half of the movie significantly faster paced, but all that slow build-up in the first half will really mean a lot in the second half. And you'll know what I mean when you get to certain parts later in the movie. Another aspect that I found really entertaining about this movie is how well it takes advantage of its multiverse setting to reference things without feeling intrusive. There are references to movies, TV shows, comics, you name it. Pretty much anyone who's a fan of anything Spider-Man will be pleased by at least one or two of the references in this movie, trust me. Okay, very minor spoiler warning. The Spectacular Spider-Man cameo equals best part. Also, the main villain of this movie is very good, but I don't really want to say anything about him until I get to the spoiler section. And, well, I don't know if there's much else I can talk about unless I go into spoilers at this point. So this is it, folks. Your last spoiler warning. Leave now if you haven't seen the movie. Alright, everyone left ready to go? Well, actually, first I have to explain something. Kind of important. You see, I haven't actually seen the last 15 to 20 minutes of this movie. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did you just leave the theater early for some reason? Did you go on an extended bathroom break and happen to miss the ending somehow? No, my friends. The truth of the matter is, some idiot thought it would be hilarious to pull the fire alarm and cause the entire theater to evacuate. So unfortunately, I didn't actually see the ending to this movie, but since I did see 85% of it, and I know that it also ends on a cliffhanger anyways, I still felt confident enough to give this review. Even if the last 15 to 20 minutes weren't as good as everything else, it would still be worth watching this movie for the first 85% that I did see. And I would honestly be shocked if the last 15 to 20 minutes was not as good as everything else that I had already seen. But I just wanted to mention this in case, for some reason, in the future when I do eventually see the ending, it may affect my opinion, but it is more likely that my opinion will go up than down. Okay, with that aside, I can now talk about what truly makes this movie a near, if not complete, masterpiece. And how about we start with the villain that I avoided talking about before, since I haven't had a chance to talk about him yet. The Spot is one of the most interesting villains I have seen in any superhero movie personally, and it's strange because at first he seems like a fairly generic kind of villain, but that is a very deliberate move by the writers. Because we, like Miles, will think he's a stupid idiot at first, but that only causes him to become more dangerous because he doesn't want to be a stupid idiot. Spot becomes dead set on taking away everything from Miles because Miles accidentally took everything away from him. But what makes him truly so dangerous is the fact that he has nothing to lose, whereas Miles has everything to lose. And thus, the only driving force the Spot has is to take everything away from Miles. Oh, and on top of that, he also has some of the best lines in the whole movie. Well, I should mention another thing that I really like about this villain is how it was Miles' fault that he was created, even though Miles didn't intend or even know that it happened. It shows that his actions in the first movie will have long-lasting consequences. And though he didn't necessarily do anything wrong in the first movie, I do always like it when movies continue what happened in the first film into the second one, instead of just entirely starting over with something completely new, because it makes the world feel so much more real and alive. But speaking of Miles losing everything, that leads me to my next point, which is about Miles and his family. So remember what I said, the first half of this movie is a bit slower paced? That's because there's not too much action outside of a couple brief scenes with the Spot, and most of that time is instead spent on developing Miles' relationship with his father and mother and Gwen. And at first you might not think too much of this character development other than, oh, the writers just wanted to spend more time with his family because they're all very interesting characters. But of course, they were puppeteering us the entire time due to a very significant twist that comes later on. As once Gwen does show up, Miles ultimately makes the decision to follow her into the Spider-Verse. Or I guess across the Spider-Verse in this case. And eventually, Miles ends up in the world of Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, and here is assembled the world's greatest army of spider people. And during this part, Miles discovers that there are fixed points in time.
But this is fixed. This is a fixed point in time.
Fixed points can be rewritten.
No, they can't. Of course they can't. Who told you?
Oops, my bad. I mean canon points, which cannot be altered or the fabric of reality will be destroyed. And one of these canon points that cannot be altered is the death of some sort of significant police officer in each spider person's life. And for Miles, that would mean his father. But Miles refuses to accept this, and stays hopeful that he can break the canon rule and save his father, which is what causes such a clash with him and Miguel O'Hara, one of the other greatest characters in this movie, who, as I said previously, that I could not talk about until now because of all the spoiler stuff, and I think you kind of understand why that is now. As you see with Miguel O'Hara, he tried to break the rules of reality to be with a family that he never had in an alternate universe where he died. But because he broke the canon point that was connected to him, it caused that entire universe to collapse. And now he is scarred for life, with the burden of his mistake forever haunting him. And thus, he refuses to let Miles go back and risk another world being destroyed. It's honestly an excellent dynamic and inner conflict between the characters, and certainly some of the best writing I've seen in modern superhero cinema. Unfortunately, I can't talk about too much of what happens in the plot after this, as the movie cut out around the part where Miles tries to get back to his own universe, and just barely escapes Miguel O'Hara, except according to the computer, he may be going to the wrong universe, the universe in which the spider that bit him came from, which is a whole nother plot point that, honestly, I'm gonna try to squish into this short little video. So as you can see, my friends, this movie is honestly excellent, and you really should watch it if you haven't seen it. And I also need to rewatch it so I can actually see the ending this time, which will probably only make me like it even more. Well, there you have it, my opinions on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And please, tell me what your opinions on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse are in the comments down below. I, of course, can't forget to thank all my lovely patrons and channel members. I mean, who could forget to do that? If you want to, you can also follow me on social media, links down below. And if you really like my content, then perhaps you consider supporting me on Patreon. Every little bit counts. But don't go just yet. Why don't you check out this video I did on Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, another one of the best looking animated movies ever made, and there's so much more to it than just the visuals. Or perhaps you could check out this list over here. I don't know what list it is, but I'm sure it has some video you'd be interested in. But most importantly of all, always remember to be iconic.